Good morning. It's Welcome Wednesday. You know what that means? We have awesome guests on today. And today we are going to rock your world. You're on the Success Secrets for Business, Family, and Life channel. I'm Vickie Helm. This is the Coffee Break Show, and it is brought to you by Metadime Digital Network. Now, today and every day, we go live Monday through Friday. And we share tips, tools, techniques, and all the things that are going to bring you inspiration, motivation, and create thrivability in your life. Now, sometimes when we want to create thrivability, what happens is we got to learn how to up our game. How do we recalibrate ourselves? How do we go about getting to that 99th percentile, getting to the point where we are actually working? I see you guys coming on in. Do me a favor, put your name down below so you can be with us, talk with us. Today, we are with Cheryl Mobley, and this is such an important conversation. She's a serial entrepreneur. She is also somebody who has created something called Recalibrate, which we're going to talk about today. It's going to be something that helps us grow and move and take ourselves to that next level. And I just want to welcome you to the Coffee Break Show today, Cheryl. So excited that you're on with us today.
Oh, I am thrilled. I can't wait for the conversation and to hear what people are thinking and what questions they have.
Great. I want to start right now. I want to start from the beginning, and I want to talk about when you say, what is it, B99, that recalibration. Let's talk about that and find out the fundamentals. How did you start it? Why did you start it? I know that's 3 questions, but we're just going to have fun and go.
Okay, perfect. So the whole B99 concept came when I was a hospital president, and I had an amazing team, and I'll say past tense, even though I'm not with them anymore, they're still amazing. So it wasn't about me for sure, but we had an amazing team, and we would consistently be in the 99th percentile when we were measured against other hospitals in the United States. So for those that don't know, most of your hospitals go to a central source to have surveys done, right? Whether that's employee engagement, whether it's patient satisfaction. Because you have to be compared across the country, you've got just a couple vendors, right? So when I say 99th percentile performance, that means if you compared us to 5,000-ish hospitals in the country, we were at the top consistently in terms of our results. So that's the 99th percentile, is that, our performance was basically always at that level. Now, when you looked at our finances and our quality metrics, they were also kind of top of the game. And so that's where the B99 came from.
Wow.
Is, for those leaders that want to have an organization that operates consistently at that level. And it's not just about the dollars, all right? We've all seen organizations that had a short-term fix on dollars and then they're gone, right? Because they were going to do it, whatever it took, they were going to hit their target. And what's so different about the B99 piece is it's a very fluid in terms of what does it feel like to work there? Right? Do you develop and serve your clients and your customers in such a way that they are your raving fans? Do people want to stay with you? Is the experience good? Yes. Is the quality, whether it's a clinical service or a product, really, really high? And so of course you have to have a strong bottom line, because if you're not, there's a problem. Something's
not right.
But it's very much about that big picture. It's not one or the other. And so people would say to me, well, what's the one thing I need to do? And I'm like, you live in a really happy place. There is no one thing, right? If it were one thing, anyone could do it. It would be easy. And there's a reason why only 1% of the organizations get here, because most are not willing to do the work. And if you look at some of the results, right? So for personal development work, only about 2% of the people are willing to put in that work. Mm-hmm. And then when you add a layer of running an organization on top of it, it's about the same, right? There's nothing, I don't believe that there is anything that stops any one leader in organization from getting to 99th percentile performance other than their willingness to do the work. But,
that's exactly the bottom line. I want to touch on that because I think it's so important. Everybody, especially on the internet, they're always about the short game. They're always about the startup phase. And I get that the startup phase is there, but to get to the 5, 10, million a year, 30 million a year. You have to get out of startup phase and you have to come into the builders phase.
Mm-hmm.
And the builders phase, that's such an important piece because it requires systems and productivity and accountability and making and tweaking and growing. And this is where, to me, this 99 percentile, this is how it happens. Everybody gets startup, but the reason startups fail is because they cannot ramp up and then ramp into this phase that you're talking about right now. This is the phase where we lose the greatest amount of businesses because they're unwilling to, do some of these things. Let me ask you something. Let me say, what would you say would be the three best things? Let's say you've bought a company or you've started a company or you've done something and you're acquiring a company or you're stepping in as the new leader of that company. What are three things that you can do to, one, assess where the company is at, and two, put in those things that are going to go ahead and ramp up? What are three things we can do to ramp up those things that are in the 99th percentile?
So fabulous question, right? Because whether you built a company yourself or you're stepping in, if you come in, if it's your own company, your blind spot is usually you see what you expect to see, or you think everybody believes and knows what you know, right? You assume that if I were to go talk to 25 of your people and I ask them the same question, I get the same answer because you just know it. So that's the blind spot on the kind of the founder CEO. If you're going in and buying it, you're a little bit more open, but your blind spot may be that you want a certain outcome, so you kind of select the facts that fit, right? If you really want it to be true. So the first thing, and I'm going to hold this up real quick, and everybody can certainly have access to this on my website, but this is, trying to hold it so it looks good. I'm not Vanna White, clearly. Here we go. Okay. And so this way.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
So what this is, you can't read it for sure, but this is the B99 framework, and it's designed as a wheel, because you don't get to just, again, do one thing. And you don't get to touch on something once and then never do it again. And the way it's framed is there are the 7 drivers that I pulled out from our experience as a hospital, because I worked with a lot of other fabulous presidents who didn't get the results that we consistently got. And so I was like, what do we do different than them? Because there has to be something. What can we pull out? How can we reverse engineer it? And so with the way that this graphic is laid out, it's a question for the leader to ask first. And to your question, that's the thing right now, right? It's to what is the questions that you as the leader need to ask? And then it spreads out to what does an individual contributor need to ask? What does your team need to be asking, whether that's an ad hoc team or a permanent team? What does the organization as a whole need to be asking? And so you look for, and what ties that all together is congruence. And so to answer your question, to me, the most important thing flat out is that you have clarity.
Clarity is, yes.
And most of us think we do, and I will ask a question for 2 founders. And I said, y'all can't talk. This is not a team exercise. Okay. This is a question. What is the answer? And I will find things like this. And I'm like, okay. So this is the first place to start. What wall are we pointing at? What is success?
That's so interesting that you're saying that. There's a guy on our team whom I love. He's just such a one of the best partners that we have. And he always says, clarity of thought with non-judgment. And that's what he's like, clarity of thought with non-judgment. We get in there and find what wall we're pointing at and why.
Yep,
yes,
absolutely.
Clarity and congruence. Yes, keep going. This is awesome.
That's awesome. So for example, for the clarity piece, the question that the leader needs to ask is really, what do I want to be true in our future?
Yes, I love that. What do I want to be true in our future? God, I love that. That's it. Write it down.
Yeah. Well, and everybody can also get it, so there's no problem. But that's really the key question to me, is if you don't know that, then all of your decisions are kind of like this. Or worst case, if your decision is, I want to be a $10 million company, I don't care how I get there, then you sacrifice the 99th percentile because your focus is strictly just bottom line. Right? So having that clarity, and then that would go then to everyone else in the organization, they would need to know what that answer is so that they can then ask themselves, are the right things on my plate today, this week, for the next 3 months, whatever it is. Because if the right things aren't on your plate, you can bust your chops, but not be moving in an organization, not be moving in the right direction. So for me, clarity is the be all and end all. Without that, you can work so incredibly hard and paddle so fast and flap your wings really fast and nothing changes except you're exhausted. Right? So that's the first thing. And so I would always, that to me, if I were to answer your question going into a company, I would ask the leaders individually, like I said, not a team assignment, right? What do we want to be true? And then your first step has to be, if we're not congruent on that, and unless they're almost like a unicorn, they're not going to be.
Are you listening to this, guys? You don't, this is so powerful, the information you got. Everybody loves startups. Startups all fun and we're doing it, blah, blah, blah. But in order to get there, she's giving you those pieces right now. You need to know where you're going. There's got to be congruence. You got to be asking these questions and you've got to be implementing these things. If you don't have these things in place, you're not going anywhere. So once you open the doors, instead of saying, then what, just that one question, what do we want to be true? Wow. Keep going. I'm sorry. I love it. I'm so excited about this. This is absolutely the most incredible sharing she's giving you. I'm telling you, I have paid $10,000 for a few hours in a day with somebody to help me do what she's doing right now for you for free. I mean, this is exceptional. Thank you for being so generous. Thank you for being so generous with your knowledge. Continue with this. We are on the number 2 part.
So before I go on, I want to add 2 things to keep me honest if I don't go back in the right way. I had an experience, like probably most of your listeners, where I worked for another organization and it pretty much sucked the life out of me, right? And because it is not acceptable to me to not do my best, no matter where I am, I was completely drained, right? And it was 2 years that were just wretched, right? And so I know what that felt like. And I know what that did to me. And I wasn't in a leadership position in this organization. I know what it did to everybody else. I know what it did to the service that we provided. I know what it did to my family, right? Because when you're trying to maintain and you come home and you're kind of like, yeah, and I'm a pretty level person. So if it was really getting to me, I know it gets to people. And so when I then ended up working in this hospital and I could feel the difference, I mean, people would literally come to walk in our hospital because just the way it felt, which you don't normally do in a hospital, right? And so it was such a striking contrast. And so for me, the reason I do this is because I have worked in an organization that sucked the life out of me. And then I've had the flip side of experience of going, this is still work, right? There's still stuff that you're like, gah, but it's so different and it's so possible. And for me, it's like, it's my obligation to say, if you want to do the work, here's the path. Right. So that's what drives me to kind of, to your point, was to go, how can I tease apart what we did differently? Because people would say to us, you make it look easy.
Yes.
And, so it's absolutely doable. The other thing to your comment that I've seen it bite a lot of us, and I've seen it get even worse lately, is, well, I want the sexy new answer that nobody's ever told me about that's going to just like fix it. It's like the magic fairy dust. And it's like, if we've heard it before, well, there's nothing sexy about clarity. And if you spent time working with somebody, you know how hard work that is. Right?
That's right. There's nothing sexy about clarity. It's so interesting that you say that. And I think it's so important because we're sold the dream that if you're an entrepreneur, you can just outsource everything you hate. And I disagree with that. I think that if you have the hand on the pulse of everything, whether you dislike it or not, it's like you have to do the things that are not fun, not sexy, not that are helping you get there. But if you can see those things in a way that's helping you get there, they suddenly are making sense. They suddenly have some sort of quality about them that's important. This is what you just said is so key. Don't run away from the things you don't like or that you don't think are sexy. You got to do them in order to win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I wanted to bring those up because I know we all want, well, I want the new toy. And it's like, you're not doing the old toy, right?
I know.
Start with the old toy first, then you can maybe create a new toy. But we have this bias toward, oh, it's fresh, it's new. It's like, yeah, it is. But if you're not doing the basics, it's not serving you. So anyway, so I digress. So the next thing, what I would suggest, whether it's your own organization that you built up, so you're a founder, CEO, or whether you're looking to buy, is that you ask that key question that we just talked about. What do you want to be true? You ask the leaders independently. And I can pretty much guarantee you're going to have to do some work, right? To get everybody, on the same page, whether you do it as a group or you bring somebody in to help you because it's just kind of like, we didn't know we disagreed. Wow, okay. And then you have to take it out to the rest of the organization. Because if they don't know, then they can't be making the choices to support moving you forward in that direction. Right? So to me, those are kind of two massive things that you need to do and see. And you can certainly get a pulse check if you ask people, what are you here to do? Another question I like to ask people is, how do you make decisions? Right? If somebody tells me, well, we wait till the last minute and we just decide, or, oh, we're never allowed to make decisions, or I don't know, because they seem like they're all over the map, or it's plan du jour. Those are cautions. Right? That not that you can't turn it around, but you need to be aware that that's what you're stepping into. Right? So those would be, the things that I would say, first off, you've got to get a really good sense of the level of clarity all the way through and not just quote unquote stop at the top.
I want to talk about that too, because I think that's important. First, I want to say, hey, Ryan, thank you. I know this is you, buddy. Resonate deeply with that soul-sucking corporate experience. There's a different way, and thank you for helping others see it. Yes. We've already put up, it's not yet time, but we put up Cheryl's program. It's right there. It's in there, so you guys can see it. Thank you for that. I want to get back to the conversation. I think it's also important to get the right people on the bus to create the culture that you want, and creating the culture of productivity and those things that help people. I want people to be proud. I know one of the biggest things that people have is if they're proud of the person they're working for, if they're proud of the leader, like who doesn't want to say, I work for Oprah Winfrey. I work for Oprah Winfrey, or I work for Steve Jobs. That's who I work with. That sense of dignity and pride, and how do we instill that, and how do we become that as a leader, and how do we create the culture of productivity that helps elevate everything? And I noticed you said you have to decide, your partners have to decide, then you got to bring it out here. You got to let the people know. You've got to have this whole structure in place. And how do we create maybe a vision or a mission or something that brings up those productivity things? What kind of things do you use?
Well, you ask such awesome questions. So this is a great lead up. So with the rest of the framework, the whole intent, because you can't be 99 without it, is that you and your team, everyone there, enjoys what they do. So what do you need to do as a leader to create that condition? Right? What do you need to, one of the things I ask people a lot is, what do we need to stop doing, start doing, and keep doing?
Yeah.
Because it's all three of those things. And again, that's another clarity question. Because when you make a choice to do one thing, you are by default making a choice not to do something else. And people don't often recognize that. They let other people's priorities run them because it feels easier in the moment to go with it. But I'm like, but by that
again. Say that again. That's so important what you said. It stunned me. I was like, wow, that is it. Say that again.
I'll try. So it really, for me, I want people to have the awareness as an individual human, as a leader, right? As somebody who works in an organization. When you choose to do one thing, you are by default choosing not to do something else.
It's true.
Because you're a finite resource.
That's right.
You just are. And so I see too many people going, well, I'll just kind of go with the flow, but it's not a big deal. I'm like, no, big deal. Because you're a finite resource. And you need to understand that you're making a decision to not do something that may be what you really need to do. And you have the right to make that decision, but be really, really clear you're making it. And,
You
and
know,
so,
what you said is so important because a lot of consulting firms, I am a consulting firm, a lot of the people that I have talked with, when they get to the point where they don't know what to do in startup, the first thing they're going to do is they do the thing they know to do. Everybody, let's go make a logo. I'm like, what for? How does that make you money? How does that get you there? And it's that not knowing what it's like, the thing that you're supposed to do. And this is so important. I write books. That's my gig. I write books and I speak and I this and that. And when I first started writing books, I noticed something, and it speaks to exactly just what you just said. And that noticing was that when I got stuck at a chapter, which is I didn't know how to let the chapter unfold, I didn't know how to start the chapter, organize it in my mind, I would start avoiding. And it was quiet avoiding. I'd always have these sexy excuses of, well, first I need to outline this, and maybe I need to go get some endorsements, but I wasn't actually tackling the thing or looking at the thing. I was creating avoidance. And the second I did that, the second I caught myself avoiding, I would get, to the point where I was like, that's it. And I would sit down at the computer and I would just do something on that chapter, and suddenly it would unfold and come out. And to me, what you just said about, maybe you're supposed to be doing this and now you're kind of not doing this. You're making a choice not to do this. We have to get to the point where our leadership allows us to look at our behavior and say, do I have clarity of thought with non-judgment right now? Clarity of thought. That's what my guy says all the time. If he's like, you're stuck, clarity of thought with non-judgment. The first person you got to get right with is you right now. How are you feeling? How are you thinking? What is here for you? Are you trying to avoid or push off? I thought that was so important. And, they're talking over here. Look at Karen agreed. Too many are in front of the money, not the purpose. And this is the things that we're talking about right here. And I want to continue the conversation, but I just thought that was so cool that you said that.
And you're spot on, because I know a lot of the clients I've worked with, especially when they've hit, $10, $20 million mark, they're convinced that what they have done is what they have to do to go forward. And so I would say to them, I said, part of my job is going to be prying your hands off the bar. Okay. Because you cannot simultaneously grow and have your hand in everything, because now you are like the ultimate choke point. So,
it's so funny you're saying that. You're so funny, because you think there wouldn't be any comfort zones or 20 or 30 million, but there is. There's comfort zone. What you just said.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you default to what you know. So if your specialty is BD, you're terrified to let go of BD.
Yes.
And it's like, but if you're not letting go of BD, let's trace this through and see how long your people are waiting for an answer from you, because you're like in BD, right? And so it's like, decide. Again, I'm pretty ruthless. I'm like, decide. You're either going to stay where you are, which is a perfectly fine choice, but just understand that you can't simultaneously do what you've been doing and grow the company, because you were basically telling everyone, you're never going to do it as good as me, and I can't trust you to do it as good as me, so I'm going to keep my hands on it all the time. And that's not the path to have people really step up.
I'm laughing right now.
Because you've experienced it, right? You know what it feels like. I'm
in it right now. Yeah. I have this magnificent team of 7. And I realize as we, continue to grow, and we're vastly growing right now, vastly. I have found my control freak inside that wants to look over everybody's shoulder and make sure we're doing it right. And my clarity of thought guy has like, you know what? You're going to have to trust us. I'm in that middle of that piece right now. Yeah. And I'm finding out that it's faster if I trust than if I'm constantly micromanaging. And I want to tell everybody I love you and thank you, and I apologize, and I'm truly listening to what she is saying.
Well, we learned the hard way, right? I had the same thing. When I first became president, it was like, oi, 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 everything, I'm responsible for everything. And because I have really, really, really high standards, I wanted to control everything.
Me
And
too.
right. And so I had somebody say to me, she goes, Cheryl, we got this. And I'm like, you're right. And I'm sorry. Right. Because that wasn't the message I meant to be sending. And so what I had to do at that point was be incredibly clear, again, clarity. What does success look like? Right. Are there any non-negotiables, things we cannot do? And then to say that here's my role, right? Here's what success looks like. Here's the time frame. I am here. Cheryl is here when you get stuck. You know, I'll want periodic updates just so I kind of know how we're going. But you have the expertise. You know what to do. Y'all run with it. And I can't even begin to tell you. I mean, this team blew it out of the water as they continued to do. But they wouldn't if I had been like, well, I need to do this, and what about that? You know, and it's like, it's hard to pry. And that's why I can talk to my folks about prying their fingers off, because I've had to pry my own. You know, and I say to them, I'm going to pry and you're going to clamp, and I'm going to pry and you're going to clamp, right? Until like you have an experience where you kind of go, okay, you know.
Did you hear what she said? Did you guys hear what she said? You're going to pry and you're going to clamp. And you know, I want you to know this is a process for me too. And I know that my team is just absolutely, I love this. Here we go. Comfort zones are choke points.
Right.
Yes, they are. And I'm knowing that. Great concept. Yes. Trusting your team means letting go of some things. I agree. And I'm doing that more and more. Work on your business, not in your business. Trust your team. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I have to tell you, when that happens, I'm very fortunate because I have somebody that I'm very close with. He's like one of my best friends, and he's one of the smartest entrepreneurs I've ever worked with because he has so much heart when he works with us. And he's the clarity with non-judgment guy. And I trust him, like really trust him, because this isn't my first business with him. This is, I don't know, second or third or somewhere there. So I know when somebody's talking in my ear that I should listen to. Mm-hmm. I also know when somebody's talking in my ear that I should just ask them to leave the office.
Right.
And I get to the point where I want to say, and the question I want to talk about is advisors, because when I work with him, I use him as my advisor. Like, do you think, what do you? Right. How do you see it? Do you see the same? And he's super visionary. Like, I think I'm visionary, but he's like vast, man. He's just vast. But I'm wondering how important is for someone to have, it's like you're in a leadership role. How many advisors did you have? How many go-to people did you have so you could go, what about this idea? And how many of those advisors were part of your team as well?
A great question. So for me, it was when I was asked to be president, that was my first time in that role. And so I certainly was like, there's a lot I need to learn. And I'd rather not learn it the hard way because nobody deserves that from me. Right. And so I spent a fair bit of time, just kind of bouncing ideas off, my supervisor, who was a group vice president level of a very large organization. So somebody with a lot of experience. Also worked with the rest of our leadership team because we all saw the world differently, which was fabulous and aggravating, right?
Yes, it is.
So it's fabulous because if you all see it the same way, you've got the same blind spots. And even if you're going, we're so good, you won't be for long. Okay. But at the same time, there's this friction because none of us felt like we were wrong. Because the way we saw the world was like, well, but how come you're, it's not like mine. And so it's that trusting thing that says, okay, here, I get it. I'll yield on that. But then there's sometimes where you're going, I won't, I won't shift on that. So certainly at the peer level, if you don't have that ability to have really candid conversations without angst, kind of what your guy's talking about, right? Without the judgment, you're not going to go very far. Or that the cost to you personally is going to be so great and nobody's going to want to work with you because they're like, World War III is out there. Thank you. We'll just go somewhere else. Yeah. As far as having external people, I think for me, the more I have learned about what it takes to really lead an organization effectively, the more I am convinced, and I don't say this because I help people, right? But the more I am convinced that you need someone outside of you who will call out your blind spots.
Yes.
But you've got to make sure, to your point earlier, that there's somebody that's congruent with the approach. You certainly don't, if you want a B99 approach, the last thing you want to do is somebody goes, okay, well, we're going to reduce the headcount, we're going to reduce the quality, and we'll get our margins up, and we'll change suppliers, and we'll do this, right? So that's the thing to me is making sure that whoever you pull from, A, has the experience, because like you and anybody else who's listening, who's running their own company, they've got a boatload of people telling them what to do who have no experience ever having done anything.
All the time.
Right?
I get people telling me how I should write books who've never wrote books, how to run my company, never done what I've done. And I'm like, okay, those are the people I tell you to walk out the door with.
But some are even more subtle. I mean, those are the obvious ones, right?
Yeah.
There are some that are just, you're like, what exactly have you done? And that was part of it for me, because it's like there aren't many people who are serving as kind of an advisor or a guide who've actually done it. You've got a lot of people telling you what to do who may have really good, well-intentioned things, but they've neey've never had to live in the scene.
Never done it, never anything.
Of making the decisions. And, and a lot of times they're hard decisions. And so,
I want to say this because I think it's so important, because you are really filling a hole in the boat. In my experience in the business world, this is the hole in the boat. There is a boatload of people who are advisors for startups. I mean, everybody wants a startup. There are a boatload of people. When you hit about 20 or 30 million, you're trying to go to that next level. Boatload of advisors here. But I would say between 1 and maybe 15 million, when you're in the 1 to 5 million range, very few people will tell you the experience you need to take your business to the next level. And Cheryl Mobley is absolutely one of the people who does. This is somebody who knows this area and knows how to take you from here to 20 or 30 million. That, and a lot of people think, well, 1 million, I'd like to just get to 1 million.
Which is cool.
You start up. Yeah. When you hit your first million, there's some level of confidence that happens. But there's the point where you start up and you hit the end of startup. Let's say startup maybe 300 to 500,000 a year. That's in your startup range. That next level from that startup, $500,000 a year, and you're going over to about 15 mil. That section of time. This is the time where you need to put these things and systems into place relentlessly. And the person who needs to grow first is the leader of the company. And this is so important, what she's sharing with you today. I want to take a minute because I thought this was cool. Talking is one thing, walking is another. Owning it and allowing it is the way. Do you have the ability to allow it? Because everything's gone. You're right. I want to let you know, this is a clue for me. This is the gentleman who is the non-clarity, the clarity with non-judgment, clarity up with non-judgment. This is my guy. This, because everything is going to be all right. And I can hear Bob Marley in my hair, in my head. And he's like,
here, it's taking a breath, right?
Yeah, it seems there's no coincidence incidents in life, is there? We're all on the same path, and clarity of the light, non-judgment, is the path leading us to our destination. And what is that destination? That is, and I love this. What do you want to be true for us? Everybody listening that works on my team or anything, what do you want to be true for us? I love that. Now, I want to let you know, I have used this system for years with every company. I do the 90-day, quarterly, 120-day, and we write all our goals down of what we're going to achieve. And everybody gets, their marching orders, and we're excited. We know what everybody is dependent on. It's like, we can't get here if somebody over here slows down, shortcuts, screws something up, we get there. And so in the 90-day, we celebrate, we look at. I want to know, what other tools do you use? Do you go quarterly like we do, or what do you use to keep everybody on the same page and looking and seeing the progression of everything you do?
Yeah, fabulous. So For me, it's about having guardrails. And your guardrails they could be mission, vision, values, whatever it is for you. But it's something that says, when we are faced with an opportunity, if it's within this, we'll consider it. If it's outside, we're not even wasting our time.
Beautiful.
Right? And that, again, comes back to having clarity to know this is a possibility, this ain't, right? Because, again, finite resource. And if you spin your wheels looking at things that aren't, it tells me you don't have clarity or you're not comfortable saying no, neither of which is really cool if you're leading a company, right? Or leading yourself, right? So that's a huge piece is knowing what's in and what's out all the time. Because if you, to hit a kind of a B99 level of performance, it requires that it's not just you as the leader or the leadership team, it's everyone in your organization, back to your point about having the right people, who are all facing and committed and energized. And I tend to talk about energy more than culture because I want to feel it when I walk in. You know, we've all walked into places where you're like, how fast can I do a UE, right? Whoa, right? Or places where you're like, wow, this is cool. And it may feel different. A hospital is going to feel different than a toy store, than, you know, whatever, but they should be, again, congruent for what they're wanting to do. So for me, that's the first piece, is that clarity of what's in, what's out. That everyone knows and everyone is trusted based on their level to make decisions without floating it up to the top, because that slows you down, right? And so that whole piece of knowing that you can trust your people, knowing that you've got the clarity, everybody understands what decisions they can make.
Yeah.
I can make this one on my own, or no, I need to run this to, you know, so-and-so kind of a thing. So that's a huge piece around getting people to be engaged. Because giving somebody the ability to make a decision says, I trust you.
Yes. Right? Yes, it does. It's very empowering.
And so if you don't feel trusted, even if you came in excited, you're probably not going to stay excited for long. You're going to come in, do your thing, but any chance that you would be creative or think about growth or think about things differently is pretty much gone, because why should you? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, at the end of the day, everything we do sends a message. And that's another good question I think people can ask themselves. This behavior, if it were done to me, how would I feel?
Yes.
Right? Because we don't often, with leaders who have really high standards, and have kind of a go, we can get guilty here. Okay, this is how I know this. All right. You know, we can get guilty of push, and not realize that we're just like running over people in our zeal to get things done. And so if you don't trust people, if they don't have the ability to make the decisions, dissent, question, you know, you're
dissent and question, yes.
Right. In a respectful way, of course.
Of course. But there's a lot of that right now, because one of the things I just recently told the team that I get to work with is that I've built 12 companies in my lifetime, but I have never been in this kind of situation. Never been before, ever. And the flooding and the supply chains and the pandemic and the uncertainty. And I've never had to lead in these times, lead in these kinds of things. And what is for certain for me is, I built companies in a time where people felt good. Money was always there. Credit was everywhere. I buy a business, fix it up, flip it, and sell it, just like people sell houses. But all of those things were there. Those things aren't there now. And that takes a different set of skill sets now. And so what I want to ask is, in this pandemic, can we just go a little bit deeper and say, if you're leading a company now, or choosing to buy a company, or choosing to build that organization, what are some of the things people are going to have to look at inside that are going to help them? Because I don't think this pandemic is 1 or 2. It's a decade long right now, between AI, robotics, everything. How is it? What could you share with them that said, this is a couple of things that I'm going to look for, and if they have to pivot, how they can pivot with everybody on board instead of, you know, just pivoting.
No, that's great, because I think the fundamentals are always fundamental. When money's easy, things are good, people are happy, we can kind of skate past some of them. We get a little bit of a pass. But to your point, right now, there is no pass. And that's so when I was actually president of a hospital when Ebola first came to the US.
Whoa.
Okay. So we didn't have any cases in our hospital, but it changed what we did and how we did it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I personally was not out providing hands-on care. So my risk was way less than my team's risk, right? Who was out working with their patients and their families. And we built on the foundation of trust we already had. We were asking people, what do you think, right? Here's the minimum we have to do as far as PPE, personal protective equipment, which probably everybody knows now, right?
Yeah.
So we asked the people that were on the front lines, this is minimum. What else do we need to do? What do you need to do to feel safe? What other ideas do you have?
Yeah.
And they gave them and we did them.
Interesting.
Right? So it's that kind of relationship that sets you up, and I don't mean that in a manipulative way, right? But that lays the foundation for that trust when times are especially hard.
Mm-hmm.
We all knew that we were there to take exceptional care of our patients and families and everyone who trusted us at a really difficult time. At the same time, there to take really, really good care of our staff. And so we would ask them what they needed. We would celebrate. We would give them freedom. We would ask for their ideas. If we couldn't do them, we would say why and what about this? So all the more imperative now that you have that foundation to build. If you're looking to come into a company or even your own, that's a great thing to check. Do we have trust here? Right? Or people like, yeah, right. Sure. Because I've worked in that. Where somebody, the more they spoke, the worse it was. It's like, you're better off not talking to me, honestly, because I trust you even less now than I did before. This is really not a good direction. But I've had other leaders that I walked through fire for because I trusted them. Yes. I knew we were there for a reason bigger than ourselves. Again, it's not just about the money. And I knew I was seen as a person who had a life outside. I was still expected to perform and deliver, no question, but I wasn't just a body getting a task done.
Yes. I want to tell you something. You said something that made my heart go up in my throat because I really connected with it. I connected with it so much. And it's like, do you have a team that you trust so much that you're willing to go to the mat for, that you would literally do anything for, where you're willing to take risks that aren't normal? It's, above and beyond risks. And I think that's a key right there. It's like, that's the magic that I have. I think out of everything uncertain, not quite know what we're doing, we have cultures, products, things that are really great. That I have a team that I can trust with my eyes closed. As something, I could have surgery and it'd be fine. I have that amazing amount of trust in that. And that's something worth fighting for. It's like, when you get to the things, I think that everybody's so busy learning how to start up, how there's so much learning curve in the beginning, that learning curve. And then somewhere in the middle, there's the tweaking curve, the growing curve, the productivity curve, and the relationship curve thing that you just talked about is so important. It's not just for the patients, not just for the consumers, but in your back office, the people you have with you. So important, so enlightening. I want to ask you, what do you do if somebody wanted to leave that would shake up the culture? Or if someone wanted to come in who didn't match the culture and is in like, this is a mistake. You don't match the culture. We got to get you out. How do you move through those situations to keep that culture on that high 99 percentile mark?
So I'll start with the bringing people on, because we were very clear, because we had recruiters doing the sourcing. So we were like, right. So we were like, this is what we're about. Okay. These kinds of things, if you see them, don't waste our time. Don't waste their time. Not going to happen. And so we would if they made it to the screening, then a manager or a supervisor would interview them. and let's say for nursing, because this was brilliant and it was instituted by our CNO and I thought it was fabulous. If we were interviewing for a nurse on day shift, a small group of the day shift nurses would interview that person as well.
Yes.
And they wouldn't get to see them unless they were potentials in our book, because we, finite resource, don't want to waste their time. But if they did not like that person and feel like they were going to be good for them, because who's going to suffer if it's not a good fit? It's those other nurses.
Yes, that's right. They have
and
to
so
work.
They had right of refusal.
Yeah.
They were like, no, we don't want to work with this person. We'd rather work short. Okay. And we respected that.
Did you do anything like 30-day trial period or 2 weeks trial period so that they actually got to work with them?
We didn't, just because the corporate setup was not, we were under a corporate umbrella that's, you bring somebody in. Technically you have a 90-day thing, but I mean, and honestly, when we would bring somebody on, they would meet with me, whether they were going to report to me or not. They would meet with a CNO. They would meet with some of our other leaders. And I loved it. Somebody's like, to the point. And Jay, I love that. Yes, I am. So, is I would tell people, I said, you have come in to an amazing organization. Absolutely amazing. And we expect you to keep it up.
Ooh, nice.
You've been accepted. This is an amazing place. We're very protective of it. And so we won't tolerate someone who doesn't,
brilliant.
So just be really clear, right? Because, but I would also at the same time, some people go, whoa. At the same time, I would say to them, you're coming in with a fresh set of eyes. And we absolutely want you to say, well, I was somewhere else and they did this and it was really cool. Have you ever considered it? Because I'm like, you will never see more than when you first come in. And so please, please, please say to any of us the things that you see, the other ideas that you have, or the what?
So smart.
Right.
So smart.
And so it was that flip side. I had one of the things somebody said to me, and I hadn't really thought about it, but I'm like, that's true. It's like, I set incredibly high standards because I'm like, if you're going to do it, do it. Otherwise, don't be here. But at the same time, with that high standard, I expected people to push themselves because there was trust, because they had the ability to make decisions, because they knew what the outcome was supposed to be, because I trusted them to come to me if they got stuck. But the more I pushed, the more I praised.
Yes.
Right.
Did you hear that? The more I pushed, the more I praised. Oh my God, they're popping off. I have to do this right here. Just a second. Yes, I am right with you, Cheryl. I've been in that position where we did a team huddle, where we envisioned what we want in a pure attitude, mindset, teamwork, work ethic, etc. Then I would interview. It was amazing how we always got what we wanted and envisioned. We had high standards and met everyone. I want you to meet somebody, Cheryl, that I think is very, very important. She is a medical worker as well. She has turned 4 failing buildings that were going to be sold to 5-star Newsweek reported buildings. The best medical team person I've ever seen take teams and create productivity. Buildings that were not profitable were profitable in 30 days from when she walked in the building. Wow. And a lot of that came from the stuff that you're talking about. Everybody, the stuff that nobody wants to do. They somehow they think you're startup and then here's revenue. And in between there's startup profits. And these things that you're talking about, these skill sets you're talking about, and I want to let you know, I plucked her from that industry, and she is the organizer of this company who puts everything into place that you're saying.
Awesome.
Everything that you're doing, everything you're saying, I totally resonate with on such incredible levels. I wish I could play this over and over and over again, do this conversation over and over again today. But I know when we get to the top of the hour, I can't run her out. But here's the thing. If you have a business right now and you're thinking, man, I'd like to get to the next level. I'd like to be in that 99th percentile. How can they work with you? Where do they get you? Tell us about how someone who's in that, range, who wants to get to that, 10, 15, $20 million range. How can they get to you and work with you?
Oh, great. So obviously there's the website. which is re-calibrate.today.
Recalibrate.today.
Is certainly a way to reach me. My email is Cheryl at re-calibrate.today. So those are probably the easiest. I'm on LinkedIn. I've got some YouTube stuff out there. But that would be the easiest thing. And honestly, like I am very congruent. My time is valuable to me as well. So I'm not about, oh, you'll pay me, cool. It's like, do I think I can serve you? And are you somebody that I feel really is congruent with what I want to do and what I want to see created? Because like I said, finite resource. And if I'm spending time with somebody who just wants a quick and dirty fix, then I'm not helping somebody who says, no, nothing but B99 is acceptable to me. And so it really is kind of a two-way screening because it's my time too. And so it's so fulfilling to work with leaders and see the transformation in their organization and see the light bulbs go on and see them willing to take the risk to try something different, because that's when you start to see the shift. Because most of us are like, but I know this and it feels safe. And it's like, yeah, and that's cool. But if you want next, you can't stay here.
Yes.
Right? You just can't. So make a choice. Staying here feels better or moving forward moves better. Completely your choice. The other thing I would comment on at the recalibrate.today, there is a tab that has this B99 framework on it. And so then there's also a place where they can ask for more information that has about like 6-7 pages of additional information on each of the drivers. We didn't go into most of them, right? We went on different things, but at the end of the day, it's about getting out of your team's way.
Yes.
To let them execute. And so that everyone, you get where you want to go and everybody has fun doing it. That's what to me is about.
I'm sorry, everyone.
Unfortunately, we all learn by not doing well, right? It's like, I'm so sorry, I didn't know, I wish I could say I didn't have those moments, but I had plenty. And like I said, I got to tell you, say, Cheryl, we got this,
I know. Cheryl, you said a couple of things earlier in the conversation. You were like, here's our bumpers. And if there's anything that falls in here, that's opportunity, etc. So we do the 90-day thing. And in this 90 days, we had a lot of opportunity fall, but it meant a lot of work. And, they love me. I mean, I'm still that great. I'm still a good leader, and I know that. And I want to get to the point where I am. It's the thing about leading is that there's personal development, and it's not about what I'm leading or how great I am, but who I'm becoming. It's that becoming part of me that I think everyone who wants to get where they want to get needs to have. You have to go through the hard work, But the best way to go through the hard work is to have somebody like Cheryl with you, because you don't have to make every decision. You don't have to get up and be, I'm great, I'm this every morning. You have to make decisions, and you have to have somebody that holds you accountable. Not just accountable to your work, but emotionally accountable. How are we leading? Where are we going? And if you can work with somebody that has experience like Cheryl does, if you can work with somebody that has that kind of experience, they know how to get you to point A, but they also know how to hold you accountable. Part of the thing is there's a boatload of coaches that like startup because they've never made $1 million before. There's a lot of coaches that have never dealt with a company that's 10, 20, $30 million that has a level of governmental regulation on top of that, and constantly having to outperform them. They've never had to work with somebody who has a lot of turnover in an industry. And how do that turnover rate down? It's like, if you can keep a happy team, you have no idea how much money you're saving and how much money you're creating. If you get these things right, you get those things. Cheryl, it has been so enlightening to have you on the show today. It has been absolutely a secret blessing, an absolute secret blessing, because I think right now, in a time where leaders are saying, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? We need people like you. This is what you can do. This is how you can. I know it's uncertain. I know it's going to be completely, vastly different over the next 10 years. I want to start with this because people are starting to comment. Thank you, Cheryl Mobley. I love your ability to cut right through the fluff and get to the point in a very clean and concise way. You are great. Thank you so much for that.
Because I love what I've heard from you. So
yeah. Labor turnover is very costly to have to manage. Yes, it is.
Absolutely.
Wow, thank you, Cheryl. Excellent info. Great show. Let me tell you, the stuff you got here, the replay button, #replay. Don't let this show go by without listening to it twice and taking notes. Cheryl, thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate it.
It was wonderful. Thank you so much for what you do in the community you built and support. This has been great.
All right, you guys, tomorrow, I know we're going to be talking about Cheryl. I get it. It's going to be fun. Thank you. That's the Coffee Break Show today. I'm Vickie Helm. This is the Metadime Digital Network. You are on the Success Secrets for Business, Family, and Life channel. Remember, there is the show, Another Perspective. There's going to be the weather show on today. Don't forget to watch Unlocked. This week, we've got shows all week long. Thank you for being here. Mwah! Peace out. I'll see you guys later. Oh, gosh, look at this. It's still coming in. Thank you, Cheryl. Awesome show. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. See you later.